There are all sorts of very good reasons why Jeep shouldn't have built a 522 kilowatt Grand Cherokee. That it has ought to be cause for celebration. Jeep has lifted the supercharged 6.2 litre engine of the Dodge Challenger Hellcat, shoehorned it beneath the bonnet of its flagship SUV, and amped everything else up in kind. Brakes, suspension, wheels, tyres, it's all been supersized. One thing that hasn't is the price. At 135 grand, the Trackhawk has more grunt, yet is about half the price of powerhouse SUVs from Mercedes, BMW, Porsche and Range Rover. Winton Raceway seemed as good a place as any to answer one burning question. Can a 2.5 ton SUV put a smile on your dial? That's worth the price of admission alone. It's fantastic. 522 kilowatts is a crazy amount of power for a vehicle like this. And 0 to 100 in 3.7, crikey, that knocks everything into a cocked hat. Cayenne, hot Range Rovers, GLE 63, AMG, they're all gone. This thing will just dust every single one of them. The only thing that's quicker is probably a Tesla Model X, but is that an SUV? I'll leave that to you to decide. The engine feels unburstable. It's slightly smaller than the 6.4 Hemi that you might have been used to. And that supercharger on it adds another 100 Ks to the front end. And you feel that weight, you do. But 522 kilowatts gets you out of a lot of trouble. Steering in this track mode is pretty crisp. The track mode also firms up the suspension. It's got Bilstein adaptive dampers. It lessens the traction control, but it does retain an element of stability control. No matter what you do, you might just hear that sound. There's still a little bit of stability control going on here, but good heavens, this thing is effective. Everything about this vehicle on track is about weight management, and that's inevitable, and it's no inherent criticism of this car, it's just a big SUV, so you have to be careful loading the front up too much into corners. You want to try and keep a certain neutrality to it because it will sledge the front end. It's got these massive Brembo 400mm brakes up front, it's bigger than a V8 supercar, and they do a pretty good job of hauling down what is still 2.4 tons of SUV. The corner's pretty flat too. It's fairly neat when you consider what it's hefting around. Doing a few laps today, so the tyres aren't in the first flush of use, I will say that. So on big 20-inch Pirelli P0s, it's still clinging on pretty well. One of the lesser known aspects of Winton is that it has a rallycross track in the centre. So, seeing as this is an SUV, we decided that we'd put it to test on the loose. Did it just do that for real? Crazy. It just went very, very sideways, but it felt super controllable. You got that Jeep Quadra-Track all-wheel drive system, and it's pulling you out of trouble. You don't have to apply a monster amount of corrective lock because you feel that the vehicle's under you at all times, but you've just got to moderate it when you're coming back from the dirt onto the tarmac, because we don't want to put this thing on its roof. It's the only one in Australia, and that would make me hugely unpopular. All too often we drive cars that aren't as much fun as they promise. We really want to like them, and yet we don't. The Trackhawk is different. It seems an easy thing to dislike, but it's just the most riotous, hedonistic assault on the senses. A vehicle that seems so brash at first acquaintance emerges as something infuriatingly charming in that typically big-hearted American fashion. You've got to ask yourself, who would buy a vehicle like this? I know it is huge fun, and blowing away Porsche 911s and Mustangs from the lights is never really going to get old, I don't think. And it's a properly practical thing. It's got ground clearance. You can fill it with your stuff from IKEA. You can burble it around at 1500 RPM all day and it feels completely civilized and it rides well. It's not got the polish, obviously, of a Range Rover or a Cayenne or something like that, but you don't expect it to, really, do you? You pay your money, you take your choice. I don't know if I'd take one to a track day with my own money, because it's probably chowing through about 30 litres of fuel per 100 kilometres, which is slightly scary. And those boots are going to be pretty expensive as well. But just as a demonstration of what a modern SUV can do, it's hugely impressive.